Thank you very much. And before we begin on the plane, this is a brand new hangar because, as you probably have learned, these planes are much bigger. The other plane was about 35 years old, and it was time, and President of the United States, numerous of them, would land, and they'd be standing next to one of the new 747s. And the biggest difference is the difference in size. It's like virtually double the size. And actually on a runway, it looks even more so. And I said to myself, you know, these countries, they have a lot of respect for us, a lot. And yet they have a plane that's much better and much newer. It's a little ridiculous out there. And we have our signal, and we have our beautiful American flag, and we put the wave in it. As you know, we've always gone with a straight little noodle, and I never loved that. Now we have a wavy, beautiful flag. We're waving it proudly because our country is doing so well. Our country's doing so well. Those ships are flowing out of the...
Did Donald Trump just expose the fatal collapse of his political brand by delivering an exhausted, rambling speech to a shockingly empty room? Hello, everyone. This is Dr. John, and we need to discuss a profoundly revealing event that is unfolding right before our eyes. Donald Trump recently delivered a speech inside a massive Air Force One hangar located at Joint Base Andrews, but the visual reality of this event is painting a devastating picture. Instead of the overwhelming show of force and popularity that his campaign usually projects, the crowd in attendance was shockingly and embarrassingly tiny. When you look at the footage that is currently spreading like wildfire across social media platforms and various news outlets, it captures a stark, undeniable visual collapse of his strongman image. The enormous space of the brand new hangar was characterized by huge empty spaces, vacant seats, and abandoned rows where throngs of enthusiastic supporters should have been standing or sitting. The visual contrast was absolutely jarring. You could see the vast echoing emptiness of this colossal aviation facility juxtaposed against a surprisingly small cluster of actual supporters who cared enough to make an appearance. This imagery provides, in one devastating visual, exactly what critics have been warning the public about and what his most ardent supporters have been staunchly denying.
And I got my man, so thank you, General. Great job. We're proud of you. And all of the people. I mean, we have the greatest military anywhere in the world. And you saw that in Iran, where in 1 week, virtually, we knocked out their entire Navy, their entire Air Force, their anti-missile weapons, their radar. We knocked out everything. Now, some of the fake news would say, oh, we didn't do it fast enough or something. We took about a week. We're a little spoiled by Venezuela, but equal, I would say equal. And now we have an agreement that was signed last night, and it's 60 days. They have to make a deal, otherwise we will do things that won't make them happy. But I don't think it's going to get to that. I think it's going to be very good. Remember, if we do that, then all of a sudden you're not going to have the oil flowing out of the strait too quickly, because people that own billion-dollar ships don't love missiles flying over them, don't love mines all over the water. This is going to be amazing what's happening now, because we have the greatest economy that we've ever had. We have $19.2 trillion coming into our country from other countries and people, but a lot of other countries are coming in, including Qatar, who was so nice in providing. You know, we were at a little bit of a logjam. We're waiting for I call them the normal 747s, and I asked the Emir if we could use the brand new 747 that he got when we first heard about it, 800 hours. 800 hours for an airplane is essentially, I think, Troy, you could say that's a brand new plane. And I said, we'd like to use it for a little while because the planes are pretty old. Our planes are old. See, a normal president wouldn't do this. A normal president wants to stay away from aircraft. We don't want to order any aircraft so that everybody thinks, but our country has to be represented properly. That includes we have the greatest military in the world. We have the greatest aircraft anywhere in the world, military fighters and bombers, and the B-2 bomber. You saw what that did.
However, the agonizingly small crowd size is not even the most concerning part of this spectacle. The truly damaging element is how Donald Trump looked and how he sounded throughout the entire ordeal. His delivery was remarkably low energy. He was rambling, halting, and visibly struggling to make his way through his prepared remarks. He appeared profoundly exhausted, looking as though he was barely able to physically and mentally push through the speech. This was the complete opposite of the confident, highly energetic, and dominant figure that his supporters constantly brag about. During his address, Trump embarked on a series of bewildering tangents. He spoke about how the previous presidential aircraft was approximately 35 years old, and he marveled at the new 747S, noting that they are virtually double the size of the old planes. He recounted looking at other world leaders standing next to their newer aircraft and feeling that it was ridiculous for the United States not to have the absolute best. He even spent time discussing the American flag painted on the aircraft, expressing his disdain for the old design which he described as a straight little noodle. He proudly proclaimed that they had replaced it with a beautiful, wavy flag to represent how well the country is doing. His rhetoric then shifted wildly to global economics and foreign affairs, delivered in a manner that caused many to observe him losing his train of thought. He claimed that ships are flowing out, with about 700 of them pouring out oil all over the place, and predicted that oil prices would drop significantly. He inexplicably transitioned to celebrating a supposed great victory in Venezuela. According to his speech, the United States is doing really well with the Venezuelan government. Large oil companies are building rigs there, and the host nation has become a happy country because they are making unprecedented amounts of money. He even claimed that this arrangement has paid for a war many times over. The wandering nature of his commentary continued as he praised a military official he referred to as General Raisin Cane. Trump noted that he liked the name right away, observing that the general is very quiet about how he operates but knows how to win. Trump stated that he always knew he would put this individual in charge of the Joint Chiefs of Staff if he ever returned to power. From there, he abruptly pivoted to military actions in Iran. He boasted about having the greatest military in the world, claiming that in virtually 1 week, the United States knocked out Iran's entire navy, their entire air force, their anti-missile weapons, and their radar system. He pushed back against fake news that suggested the military action was not fast enough, mentioning a 60-day agreement signed the previous night and warning that failure to make a deal would lead to unpleasant consequences for them. He emphasized this point by stating that people who own billion-dollar ships do not love missiles flying over them or mines in the water. He also touted domestic economic successes, claiming the country has the greatest economy ever with $19.2 trillion coming in from other nations. In a particularly bizarre anecdote about securing aircraft, he mentioned being in a logjam waiting for a normal 747S and subsequently asking the Emir of Qatar to use a brand new 747 with only 800 hours of flight time on it, which he considered essentially brand new. He justified this unusual request by insisting that the country must be represented properly with the greatest aircraft, referencing military fighters and the devastating capabilities of the B-2 bomber. Throughout all of these sprawling anecdotes, observers noticed moments where he trailed off, seemed confused, and lost his focus. It was a performance that completely lacked crispness and sharp command. The media and political commentators are already seizing upon these visuals to paint a picture of a president who is entirely drained and struggling. For instance, MetaTouch immediately put out a video officially calling the event a disaster speech delivered to a very tiny crowd. Commentators are pointing to this footage as undeniable proof that the strongman image is undergoing a visual collapse. The stark contrast on the screen is too obvious to ignore. What makes this situation catastrophic for his political future is that this Air Force One hangar speech is not an isolated incident. There is a clear, undeniable pattern emerging. Trump has been hosting tiny crowd events in several other locations recently. Events in Vegas and Pennsylvania similarly suffered from a severe lack of attendance, where the massive crowds simply did not show up the way they used to. At multiple recent gatherings, the overall energy has felt incredibly low, and Trump has consistently looked tired and exhausted. This reveals that his declining ability to draw massive crowds and deliver energetic performances is part of a much broader deeply concerning trend. Compounding the disastrous optics of the empty hangar are the deeply troubling physical moments that have been captured on camera. Footage has been widely circulating showing Trump visibly struggling to navigate the stairs of Air Force One. He has been seen stumbling, looking unsteady, and almost falling while making his descent. Furthermore, there is highly concerning footage of him practically collapsing into the seat of his limousine immediately after getting off the plane. In these clips, his head rolls back, he sighs heavily, and he looks completely and utterly wiped out, appearing as though he can barely manage to stay awake. This is not the image of a vital, energetic leader. This is the portrait of someone who is struggling immensely with the immense physical demands of the job. When you combine the visual of the tiny crowd at the hangar with the low-energy rambling speech, the stumbling on the aircraft stairs, and the collapsing into the limousine, you synthesize a narrative that is absolutely devastating for Trump. This collection of moments provides concrete evidence that his entire political brand is collapsing, demonstrating that he no longer possesses the boundless energy he once had. He is clearly not the vital, dominant force that his ardent supporters claim him to be. This narrative of physical and political decline is incredibly powerful and exceptionally difficult for Trump to combat because it relies entirely on objective visual evidence. It is all right there on camera, unedited and undeniable. According to MetaTouch and various other media outlets covering the Hangar event, the occasion was supposed to be a grand diplomatic unveiling or a prestigious presidential moment showcasing command and confidence. Instead, the staggering rows of empty space told a story of plummeting enthusiasm and declining relevance. His rambling delivery, characterized by weird tangents and a failure to command the room, made him look like someone who desperately did not want to be there. The implications of these recent clips, both the hangar speech and the exhaustion footage, are profound because they stand in direct contradiction to his foundational political identity. Trump has meticulously built a brand centered on being an unstoppable force, an energetic dynamo who works ceaselessly without ever experiencing fatigue. He has positioned himself as the ultimate alpha figure who commands the most massive rallies and overwhelming support. However, when viral clips showcase him giving a feeble speech to a sparse audience or stumbling weakly into a vehicle, that entire mythological narrative begins to fracture. In the arena of modern politics, visuals possess vastly more power than mere words. A single viral clip of the former president looking exhausted inside an empty hangar will inflict far more damage on his campaign than 100 critical articles. Opposing political campaigns and media organizations are going to utilize this footage heavily over the next year or more. These clips will be featured prominently in campaign advertisements, opposition research packets, and viral video compilations. Critics will inevitably splice together this new low-energy hangar footage and the clips of him stumbling with the vibrant, high-energy footage from his massive 2016 rallies. The stark side-by-side comparison will force voters to ask what happened to his energy and why he looks so diminished. The timing of this visual evidence is particularly dangerous for Trump. There's an increasing, widespread conversation occurring in American politics regarding age, stamina, and overall fitness to serve in the highest office. Voters are already expressing deep anxieties about aging leaders and questioning whether these individuals possess the necessary physical and mental fortitude to manage the presidency. When Trump delivers a confused, rambling speech to an empty room, stumbles on stairs, and collapses exhaustedly into a limousine, he feeds directly into those pre-existing anxieties. He essentially provides visual validation to voters who are already worried about his physical fitness, reinforcing their concerns in a way that cannot easily be spun by campaign surrogates. To truly understand the gravity of this situation, we must break down why this specific visual disaster matters so much politically. First and foremost, the tiny crowd directly contradicts his endless bragging. For years, Trump has relentlessly boasted about having the biggest rallies and the most enthusiastic supporters in political history. The undeniable footage of a massive empty hangar undercuts everything he claims about his current level of support. Secondly, his low energy performance damages his brand of projecting dominance and control. When a politician whose entire identity is built on strength delivers a halting, confused speech, it makes him look weak rather than strong. Furthermore, the undeniable physical exhaustion caught on tape is impossible for him to easily explain away. He cannot simply dismiss these moments as fake news or media bias because the video footage is real and unedited. He cannot brush it off as a singular bad day because there is a documented pattern of small crowds in Vegas and Pennsylvania, coupled with multiple instances of physical stumbling and exhaustion caught on camera. Opponents now possess incredibly potent visual material to raise legitimate questions about his physical health and stamina, crafting a compelling narrative of a drained leader whose best days are behind him. Historically, one of Trump's greatest superpowers has been his unparalleled ability to strictly control the narrative and define himself on his own terms. But viral video evidence that directly contradicts his self-proclaimed image severely undermines his ability to control that narrative. The visuals simply speak for themselves. If voters begin to genuinely perceive him as tired, exhausted, and physically vulnerable rather than energetic and dominant, his iron grip on the Republican Party and his appeal to critical swing voters will inherently weaken. Elections are largely won by generating enthusiasm, maintaining momentum, and mobilizing supporters. If the crowds are demonstrably shrinking and the overall energy surrounding his events is steadily declining, this creates a massive practical problem for his campaign infrastructure. Smaller crowds naturally result in fewer motivated voters, and lower energy translates to a lack of enthusiasm spreading through his base, which directly damages his ability to win competitive races. We are guaranteed to see these specific images from the Air Force One hangar, along with the clips of his physical exhaustion, repeated endlessly by commentators, critics, and opposition media. They will be cited as definitive validation by voters who already harbored doubts about his age and stamina. This event signifies a profound shift in his political calculus. It alters how both Republicans and swing voters perceive him, fundamentally changing the political landscape. Trump's enduring power has always been deeply rooted in a manufactured myth. The myth that he is an unstoppable, vital force with overwhelming mass appeal. But when visual evidence forces that myth to crack, everything built upon that foundation becomes incredibly fragile. The tiny crowd inside that hangar is far more than just a momentary lapse in good optics. It is tangible, visual proof of what many people have been privately whispering and worrying about. It confirms that his energy is rapidly declining and his ability to draw massive crowds is fading. This growing chasm between the myth of Trump, the unstoppable force, and the reality of Trump, the exhausted politician, is what ultimately ends political movements. Myths are a potent tool in politics. They keep supporters motivated and terrify party members into blind loyalty. However, when reality violently punctures that myth, supporters start to question their allegiance, party members lose their fear of challenging the leader, and political opponents gain newfound confidence and momentum. This exact phenomenon is happening right now. The reality, as documented by the video evidence, is that he is exhausted, his crowds are tiny, and his overall energy is startlingly low. This moment at Joint Base Andrews will be permanently remembered and endlessly cited as the critical turning point when the cracks in his carefully curated facade became entirely impossible to ignore. It serves as undeniable evidence that something fundamental has shifted, and that the window of opportunity may have permanently closed for a politician who requires the illusion of endless vitality to survive. Once visual evidence plants seeds of doubt regarding a leader's strength, that doubt grows rapidly, and it is notoriously difficult for a political figure to recover their former glory. The upcoming side-by-side comparisons of packed, roaring stadiums in 2016 versus the echoing, empty hangar of today will be devastatingly persuasive. It cannot be fought with mere words, excuses, or political spin. The only way to combat such damaging footage is by generating new visuals that project massive strength and vitality. Yet, If he is fundamentally incapable of drawing those massive crowds anymore, he is hopelessly trapped by the very medium he once mastered. The visuals that were intended to project his dominance are now the precise instruments proving his undeniable decline. This Hangar event is not just a passing news cycle, it is a visual story of a leader who has decisively lost his grip, his energy, and his unique ability to command a room. The footage is already doing immense damage as it is relentlessly shared, analyzed, and integrated into the broader conversation about his long-term viability. For a man whose entire brand was built on mastering imagery and performance to project success, this specific performance was an unmitigated catastrophe. The narrative is aggressively spinning against him, and because you cannot unsee what has been caught on tape, he will find it nearly impossible to reverse this momentum. These moments of stumbling, low energy, and empty spaces will become the immediate visual shorthand for the broader narrative of his political decline. He desperately wanted to appear strong, vital, and dominant. Instead, he looked remarkably weak, tired, and diminished. He intended to showcase overwhelming enthusiasm. Instead, he highlighted a tiny gathering swallowed by an empty hangar. He aimed to project absolute command. Instead, he radiated exhaustion and confusion. This fatal gap between his grandiose intentions and the depressing visual outcome is exactly what destroys political careers. This event captures the fading of a powerful myth, confirming to anyone paying attention that he is simply no longer the force he used to be. His crowds have undeniably shrunk, his energy has plummeted, and the defining footage of this era tells a brutal story that he is completely powerless to stop.